Hey, how's everyone doing? Back for a second post-game chat. Had a pretty good one last week. I don't know if I'll go almost an hour like last week, but I said I'd do it again, so here I am, and I hope it's not too late. I hope there's still some Red Raider fans out there who are awake. So if you have your questions, something you want to say, fire away. Sam X9000 says Raider Power. Last Sunrise says we were at the game. Good times. Yeah, it was good times. I mean, 39-14. It was a complete victory. I want to give a shout out to Zach Kitley because I picked Baylor. I picked Baylor to win 31-28. And one of the reasons was I was skeptical that Texas Tech would stay with the running game, would run Taj early and often. And that's exactly what they did. I mean, first drive, had over 40 yards, marched down the field. Of course, Baron Morton finished off the drive there with one of his 3 touchdown passes. But Taj Brooks is special, looked special, and really dominated. Him and the offensive line really dominated the game. But, I mean, so did Tech's defensive line. And the special teams played well again. Morton had a very good game, 3 touchdown passes, 1 touchdown run. So it was a total team effort. But, man, that running game is special. Offensive line is very good at run blocking. And Taj, for my money, he is as good as any running back in the Big 12. And he's one of the top running backs in the country. I mean, I really believe that. He's very tough to get on the ground. He breaks a lot of tackles, a lot of yards after contact. He's always falling forward. He's a good receiver, very good in pass protection. I said it in the post-game rap video that's posted, but I think he's going to have a really, really good future in the NFL. Somebody's going to get themselves a really good running back. So, it was a lot of good times for Red Raiders. Big road victory, first road victory of the season. Just the second true road victory for the Red Raiders under Joey McGuire. So all around, man, good times for Texas Tech. Parker Brown wants to know, is Kansas State in trouble next week? And also TCU looks even more beatable. The season can be salvaged. Yeah, it's funny. Again, college football is so week to week. It just really is for so many teams. But you mentioned TCU getting beat. I believe Texas Tech's the only Texas team in the Big 12 to win this weekend. Of course, Texas lost that crazy game against Oklahoma. I got to watch that. A lot of times I'm, getting ready for the radio show or doing the radio show or at the Tech game or whatever. And I don't get to watch a lot of the games, but I watched that game. That was a crazy game. I got to cover that game, 3 or 4 times. And I know most people watch this probably hate both those teams, and I get it. But being at the State Fair there and the Cotton Bowl and all that, it's a pretty unique experience, and that's a unique game. It has its own energy, and that was a great game. But Texas lost, TCU lost bad. Houston didn't play this week, I believe, and then of course Baylor lost. So I mean, hey, Tech, only team in Texas in the Big 12 to win. So that makes the weekend even sweeter for the Red Raiders. But in terms of Kansas State, they didn't look great against Oklahoma State, but there's been some really bad Kansas State teams that have beaten Texas Tech here recently. I believe it's 11 of 12. I know the last victory Texas Tech had over Kansas State was in 2015, but the recipe for success in that game was DeAndre Washington rushing for like over 200 yards. The Red Raiders really dominated the line of scrimmage and pushed Kansas State around in that game. I think it was a senior day game, and it was one of those where Dre and I think LaRaven Clark, that's how long ago it was. Mahomes was here and all that. But I think Dre and LaRaven, the seniors, went and kind of had a players-only meeting and told the guys, hey, we're not losing senior day. We need this victory. And that was a big win that season. And that was the last time, though, you've beaten Kansas State. And like I said, there have been some bad Kansas State teams between then and now beat Tech. So I'm not ready to make a prediction. I definitely want to think about some more, but it is good it's at the Jones. I think Texas Tech can beat that team, that Kansas State team. Now, will they? We'll have to see. But if they do, then look out. Tech will be in the mix in the Big 12 to make some noise. Right back in it in the season. I think fans will get right back into it. That would be 3 wins in a row. You go to 3-1 in the Big 12. That would be pretty exciting. So, another week, another big game for Texas Tech coming up. The last man says Baylor Cup greater than Baylor Bears. Yeah, I mean, 2 touchdowns for Baylor Cup. He looked great. A lot of us have been saying, and a lot of people on Inside the Red Raiders have been saying, run the ball, and then when you pass, get the ball to the tight ends. They're big threats. And Baylor Cup, 2 touchdowns. He looked really good. And obviously, the running game was great. So I feel like Texas Tech has an identity. Steve Linton came on and had a great game, 3 sacks, 2 forced fumbles. He was really good at the end of the Houston game. Several other guys. Charles Esters looked really good coming off the edge. The whole defensive line. I mean, I think they held Baylor to like 17 yards rushing, less than a yard per carry rushing. I mean, that's crazy good. Just totally dominating performance from the defensive line. So maybe Tech has an identity now. Run the ball with that stud running back, Cameron Valdez. Give him, some carries there. He's a big play threat. Barron, more of like a 20-25 pass attempts rather than 35 or 40 pass attempts. And this offensive line likes to run the ball. So you do that, help your defense out. Special teams has been really good these last 2 weeks. It looks like you have something in both your kick return and punt return with Dre McCray and Miles Price had a nice punt return tonight. So, I mean, things are starting to come into focus and why so many of us were high on Texas Tech in the offseason and thought they'd have a very good season. Now, they beat Houston and Baylor. And that's good. That's a good start. They look really good. Those are thorough victories. Let's see what they do against Kansas State. Kansas State's going to be looking for to bounce back after that loss at Oklahoma State. But how good is Kansas State? Do we really know at this point? They lost to a good Missouri team. They lost to Oklahoma State on a Friday night, kind of weird deal. But I guess we're going to find out at least how good they are when they come to the Jones next week. Kitley tried to get cute in the middle of the game and then realized he could keep running it, and then it was over. Yeah, I'm not going to criticize Kitley too much, though, because I really wanted Tech to come out and establish the running game, and that's what they did. I think Taj had over 40 yards in the first drive alone, that touchdown drive to open the game. And then later in the game, there was a point where I think he had 6 or 7 carries in a row. I don't know if McGuire told him to do that, if that's what Taj did. The offensive line told him, because I know some of the offensive linemen in the Houston game were telling McGuire, he told me on Monday in the press conference that, they were saying, hey, you want to settle the game, run the ball, coach. And so, I mean, for whatever reason, Kitley did run the ball a lot. Taj had 31 carries. McGuire said in the postgame tonight he believes that's a career high, 170 yards, career high. So, I mean, Baird Morton threw a career high, 3 touchdowns. So, normally if your skill position players are setting career highs, then that means your offensive coordinator, you got to tip the cap a little bit. So, Kitley deserves some criticism. I hate that it took a third of the season for them to realize, or at least to utilize, their best strength on offense and what this offense does best. But as far as tonight, I think we got to tip the cap and recognize that Kitley did, call a good game and did what he was supposed to do. Save the best for you says, hope they start to run Valdez more so Brooks won't break down after all these touches. I don't think that's a terrible point, but also we can't say, hey, give the ball to Taj, he's a workhorse, and then be like, oh, well, maybe we should back off. Maybe they're running him too much. Right now, Taj still looks pretty strong. I mean, I think if they played another quarter, he'd run for another 50 yards and a touchdown, or maybe even more. And that Baylor defense didn't want any part of Taj, and rightfully so, perhaps. So, there was at least 1 or 2 series where Taj didn't play and Valdez got the carries, but Taj is also your best pass protector, like I said, too, which I know you want to run the ball, but I get why they trust Taj so much, and Cameron, they're easing him into it. So I kind of agree with you, but also, I mean, I think Taj needs to get 30 carries a game. I mean, I think that's what this team needs. If you're trying to win the game, you have a healthy beast stud back there, one of the best players, like I said, I think in the Big 12. Feed him the ball, and make those defenses stop him. And he's been remarkably durable for his career. I mean, he's had an injury here or there, and I don't want to jinx it. I'm knocking on wood here, knocking on the 5 head. But I think keep doing what you're doing with Taj for now. If he shows some signs of maybe slowing down or wearing down, then yeah, I mean, you gotta mix Cameron in there more. Parker Brown says he hopes finally playing Kansas State in a night atmosphere boosts Tech's chances. He's only remembered miserable 2 p.m. and 11 a.m. beatdowns. Yeah, now that you mention it, Tech normally does play Kansas State in day games. So that's a good point. I mean, night games at the Jones, they're not easy for anybody. So that might help. But there have been some games where it wasn't even beatdowns. It was close games where Kansas State just made a play here or there to win the game. So, yeah, I think you're right. That's a good point. It being a 6 o'clock kickoff, the fans should be fully invested in the day, if you know what I mean, with the libations and stuff. And the Jones should be rocking after these 2 really, really big performances. Zeke Lansford says, "Hey, I just want to say I enjoy your content, man. Zeke, I appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in, watching the channel. Really appreciate it." Monty Blunt says, "Who is most responsible for the change? More importantly, the running game, Kitley, McGuire, or Morton?" That's a really good question. Sorry, voice gets a little tired after the radio show and everything all day in the video. I asked McGuire that on Monday, and he said the right thing, what he should say, that it was, the whole team basically. But like I said, he mentioned Caleb Rogers was telling him, hey, run the ball. I think everybody's saying, hey, run the ball. I think this is weird, but I think Morton getting banged up against West Virginia may have kind of finally convinced everybody, like, hey, we need to protect the quarterback. Offensive lines clearly feels better about running the ball. And then you got Taj. So I do think there was a lot of things that went into it. It wasn't just one thing, but I mean, clearly this is a running team. This is a team from top to bottom that operates better when Taj Brooks and all the running backs are getting the ball, and you're not running your quarterback. Now, I think Barron, he had that touchdown run, but I think he was credited with 2 runs. I think one was a sack and one was the touchdown run. So that's good that they're not running him a lot. You have good running backs. Give them the ball. I get the X's and O's part of it, but you really got to keep Barron healthy. So if I had to say, if there was one thing, I would say, because I know McGuire wants to be a physical running team, I would say McGuire probably said, hey, look at all these factors, run the ball, give Taj the ball early and often. And, to Kitley's credit, to Barron's credit, that he's not, checking out of a lot of runs, they are running the ball, and they're running the ball well. Nate Moon says, I like the more balanced approach, but there still seems a focus on throwing to the boundary and neglecting the middle of the field. Maybe one completion tonight in the middle third. Design or QB? Yeah, it's the design. I mean, because it doesn't seem to matter who the quarterback is. And I think that's really weird. I wish I could sit here and deny, say, oh, that's just imagination. That's a fan-created thing. But they really don't throw the ball over the middle a lot. And I don't understand why. What's wrong with throwing the ball over the middle some? I mean, if it's open. I like crossing routes. I like slants. And they will throw some slants like in their RPO game, but we don't see it a lot. It's a lot of screens, a lot of things outside, outside the hashes. So I would like to see that incorporated, make the team. And that's a big part of spread. I know it's not a true air raid. We're not talking about Mike Leach's air raid, but it's off the tree, way down the line. Kitley is a Kingsbury disciple. Again, not the true air raid, but spread, throw it all over the field offense. I mean, one of the principles of running any spread offense, I don't care even if you run the football primarily out of it, is making teams defend the entire field. I think Kitley likes to call it attacking grass, which that's fine. getting guys in open spots of the field, basically, and making defenses, stretching them both horizontally and, of course, vertically. So not utilizing the middle, like any part of the field, makes little sense. Now, maybe the quarterbacks have something to do with it. Maybe both Shuck and Morton don't like, which I don't buy that. I think it's the design. I really do, and I don't understand it. That I may ask Kitley about that on Monday, actually. Reckham says, "Let's go, loving this run and gun, baby." Yeah, me too. Just philosophically, football is cyclical. I'm old enough, you can tell with all the great. I'm old enough and watched enough football in my day to know that everything scheme-wise with football goes in cycles. And, when Leach hit the scene at Tech, beginning of the century, it was like Nebraska had dominated, like a lot of like power, between the tackles, come right at you. We're going to do this and you can't stop us. Ground and pound. And linebackers were like, some of these guys were huge, and weren't really, they were designed to go fight in a phone booth, not to run around the field. And so these spread offenses just tore those kind of players up. And now linebackers look like gazelles. Don't get me wrong. They're 230, 235, but they all can run because they have to cover a lot of space. So it makes sense now that since the defenses have been designed, you see a lot of 3-3-5s out there. They've been designed to stop these spread offenses that throw the ball over the field and cover a lot of space. It makes sense that a team that will line up, really go heavy with 12 or 13 personnel, or keep spreading with 4 receivers, or 3 receivers and 1 tight end, 1 running back in a 11 personnel, and run straight at people, or do some traps. And Tech's dart running game that how they call it has been very effective with Taj Brooks. 4 straight 100-yard games. I feel like that's where it's at now. We're coming back around where defenses have caught up to the spread. The teams that can really start, or at least set up the pass with a power running game, are the ones that are going to be really hard to stop on a consistent basis. And I think that's what Texas Tech actually has right now, the personnel they have this season. And I think it could be really effective. I think it's going to get better too. I know teams will try and stack up the box, but Bear Morton will take advantage of it. And he showed tonight 3 touchdown passes. He's able to run a little bit if need be. So it's not like Tech can't throw if need be. All right. Next question comes from Cowboy season. Tech had close losses to 5-1 Wyoming, 5-0 Oregon, and 4-1 West Virginia. Keep that in mind. Let's stack up those conference wins, because that's what matters. And that's a good point. But the reason why all those teams have good records is because they beat Tech too. And that's a big part of it. That was one of their bigger games on their schedule. And all 3 of those games were winnable for Texas Tech, which, supports your point. But to me, the frustration was that Tech was playing below its potential, way below its potential. And I think it's because they had an identity crisis. I've been saying this for a month now. We said it, but like Monty Joe and I don't. You go back and look through this channel, how many videos we talked about Taj Brooks running the ball. If Tech will do this, they say they want to do this. Will they do it? And then they come out, and Shuck ran a lot. They were throwing the ball inefficiently, a lot of incompletions, a lot of drops, a lot of sacks given up. Quarterbacks look twitchy. This running game has settled things down. And they're also utilizing their tight ends now too, which, that's what we thought they were going to do, or hoped, especially with the tight ends, was more hope. But I really thought they were going to utilize Taj more early on. And I think if they had, I really believe Tech would have won at least 2, if not really all 3 of those games. So it is what it is. It looks like they know who they are now. And I think Tech's going to be pretty tough to beat, especially at the Jones. But, you still got a lot of time left. These teams changed a lot of injuries happen. So anything can happen. But I agree. Keep stacking the wins in conference, and then we'll see where they're at right there at the end of the season. Marty Garcia wants to know, what's my take on Morton's game today? Efficient. He had that one, I think it was the first play of the second half for Tech's offense. He had that one interception, which I thought was an ill-advised throw. But overall, each of the last 2 games, his first 2 starts of the year, by the way, he has been very efficient. And, I don't know if it's because I asked Kitley about that on Monday because he looked so much better against Houston than he did at West Virginia. He said he thought Morton, knowing that he was the guy, really settled him down. I mean, obviously, Shuck's going to be out for the regular season, but for the season. So Morton knows he's the guy. He's not looking over his shoulder or thinking he has to do this or that or, make all these Superman plays. And he has a good arm. Now, when the offense is settled down by running the ball and kind of have defenses on their heels with that, I think in some of these one-on-one situations, he can make some really tough throws. I mean, that touchdown throw to Baylor Cup tonight was special. That was a heck of a throw. I think it was a 16-yard touchdown pass. That was really nice. The back shoulder fade to Coy Aiken, sorry. His first touchdown catch as a Red Raider. Shout out to him. I mean, that was a really good throw. So I thought he played within himself. I thought he was efficient. And I thought he's exactly what they need from a quarterback, given what Tech's identity is evolving into or really is. So I'm a huge Bear Morton fan. I'm not going to lie. And, he's not 100% healthy. He still is a little banged up from West Virginia, but he's playing really well. If he plays like this, where he's accurate, he takes care of the football, he's not trying to do too much, I think Tech's going to be tough to beat. He's going to have a really good season. And I think it's really going to be a building block for him going into next year. Matador Mike says, Tech gets a win and the horns go down. Was a great day. Yeah, I mean, TCU went down too. I don't know how you feel. Full disclosure, my dad played football for TCU, so I don't hate TCU like a lot of y'all, but I get the hate, But, I mean, from a Texas Tech perspective, all these Texas teams losing and you winning doesn't suck. All right. Billy Blueheart he says, Tech has been relevant by zigging when everyone has zagged. He said, I think that's what's made the air raid so successful for so long. Do you think the Power Eye would bring the Raiders to championship glory? I don't think you have to go to the Power Eye. I get it. I mean, it would be fun, right? But definitely a run-first approach. And they are being very physical with a lot of the runs, a lot of traps, these counters where they're pulling these big linemen. I thought Jacoby Jackson, who started for injured Cole Spencer at left guard, he's a big athletic dude. I mean, he actually has lost a lot of weight, so he looks a lot better. He's able to move a lot better. I think he's going to be a really good player, like an all Big 12 caliber player moving forward for Texas Tech on the offensive line. Like, I'd like to see him start pretty much anywhere, just wherever, as long as you can get your best offensive lineman on the field. I'd like to see him play somewhere because I know they moved him out to tackle some, I believe in fall camp, maybe in spring ball, one of them. This offseason, he got some time at tackle. So I like Jacoby Jackson, and I think I don't think you have to go to a Power Eye to be a physical running team. You could use some 12 personnel, get some of those other tight ends when they're healthy in there who are good at blocking, and do some things creatively and still spread defenses out with the threat of the pass and some of your talent on the outside, but run the ball more often than pass. Save the best for you. Xavier White should switch back to a running back since they run the ball so much now. That's not a bad idea. I talked to Xavier before the season, and he said, look, I'm going to play some running back too. We haven't seen that a lot. We saw some Nehemiah Martinez earlier in the year, but since Cameron's been healthy, we haven't really seen them as much, and it's been heavy Taj, which I don't have a problem with. But no, Xavier's capable. I think before the season, he was averaging like 7 yards a carry for his career, but had some injury problems. I think Matt Wells, that era and that coaching staff, they utilized him more, at least one season exclusively as a running back, and he was effective. It's a matter of him staying healthy. GBYO says, I did not get to watch the game. What was your take on the offensive line? How are the tackles versus the guard center? Yeah, I thought the offensive line had stacked another very good performance. I believe they only gave up 1 sack, and Baron Morton was not under pressure a lot. I think the sack was really more of a cover sack than anything. And, how can you argue with the results in the running game? They were terrific. Now, some of those runs, Taj kind of did himself. I mean, he broke several tackles, a lot of yards after contact. But, I mean, come on, man. The offensive line, this 2 games in a row, they've played really well. They've received a lot of criticism, including for me, over the last couple of seasons, and I think rightfully so. I really do. But I think we got to give credit where credit's due. I thought they looked really good. I really like the guards. I really like I already mentioned them, but Jacoby Jackson and Dennis Wilburn together, I think they're really good. Caleb Rogers, I've been as critical of him as really about anybody I've heard, at least in local media, for whatever that's worth. But he's actually pretty good in the running game as a run blocker. I'm still I'm not sure about him in pass pro, but he's really athletic. And going back and watching the Houston game, he made some really nice blocks. He's a lot better in pulling than Monroe Mills. Mills had he seems like he always has 1 or 2 plays a game where he just totally whiffs. And he did so again tonight against Baylor on a cut block with the ball that was batted up in the air, actually, by defensive end when Monroe Mills whiffed. Everybody else got their blocks. Mills didn't. And the pass was going out to the left. I think y'all remember this. But Barron jumped up and batted the ball down, thankfully, or that would have been a pick. It would have been a big play for Baylor. But overall, even Mills included, the offensive line, they were terrific against Baylor. And that's 2 weeks in a row. They were really good against Houston, too. Tech just doesn't have a double me takeover style receiver right now. Hudson will probably be the number 1 receiver day 1 next year. Hopefully it frees up the rest of the field. Yeah, I think Jaron Bradley has been a disappointment. At one point, I don't know if he still is, but after like 3 or 4 games, he was leading the team in receptions and yards. But he just hadn't had the type of season I was expecting. He was really good at the end of last year. Had a big touchdown catch against Oklahoma in the regular season finale. I don't remember exactly what he did against Ole Miss. It seemed like a lot of guys had good games against Ole Miss. But he's a really talented guy, and I don't really know why it hasn't come together for him, but it hasn't so far this year overall. Miles Price is good, but he's not a W kind of guy. And, I mean, at this point, I'm watching the tight ends, especially I don't know. I knew Mason Tharp was banged up, but I didn't know he was going to miss tonight. I'd be lying if I said I knew that. I didn't know that. So I don't know how long he's going to be out. But when you have both those guys, I'm a defense in terms of the passing game. You got to watch. I mean, Baylor Cup and Mason Tharp are legit receiving threats, so that's somebody to watch. But, I'm hesitant to say Micah Hudson's going to be the number 1 despite – as soon as he gets on campus, despite, his obvious talent level, just because that happens sometimes. These highly rated guys, it takes them a year or so, and some guys, they never really do it. But I don't expect that with Micah. I think he's going to be a star. But I don't know if he's just going to walk on campus and be number 1. But if he does, then, hey, I'm all for it. Who is this Banks guy? He had a great game. Duda Banks, Marion Banks. What a great story he is. Defensive lineman. He's been in the program for 3 or 4 years now. And, I thought Joey McGuire's quote on him, I think it was spring ball. I get them mixed together. Either spring ball or fall camp. At the beginning, he said, Marion Banks, Duda Banks, knows that it's put up or shut up time. It's his 3rd or 4th year in the program. He needs to make plays. He needs to be a guy. And he was a highly rated dude, I think out of Wichita Falls Rider. I don't know if he was a 4-star or a high 3-star, but he was a highly rated recruit who came in. I remember he was overweight and had a hard time what's the right word? Bringing the intensity every day like in practice. He had some times where he looked sluggish. He'd have a good day and he'd have a terrible day. He had an okay day, then, he was all over the place. And he lost some really bad weight. By all accounts, his attitude has been great. He's one of the best practice players. And so I was expecting him to have a good season. Now, Quincy Ledet came in at transfer and was taking some of those snaps at the interior defensive line, on the depth chart, backing up guys like Jalen and Tony Bradford. But Duda Banks is very talented, very capable, and having the right attitude, motivation, knowing it's like it is his time. He either has to start doing it or what? Go to another team, maybe hang it up. It's that kind of deal. And fear is a hell of a motivator for most of us. And he's accepted that challenge, and I was very excited to see how he played tonight. He played very well, and I expect that to continue, to be honest. Oh, Cactus on the Brazos, I skipped yours. What did I skip? Ask it again. Matador Mike says he predicts in the offseason OU would beat UT and Tech would beat both UT and OU for a second year in a row. Well, I guess you said you thought it would be Tech and OU in the championship game. Fair enough. Wow. I mean, that would be amazing. What a great way. Somebody said to me today off air when we were at the radio show, our intern, we call him Todd, but that's not his real name. I can't remember what his real name is. He's actually great. If he wants to do media, he has a bright future. He knows his stuff. Anyways, he said basically that what were we talking about here? It's late. Oh, yeah. He said that if Tech could spoil UT's chances to get in the Big 12 championship, that would be the ultimate like middle finger to them on their way out the door to the Big 12. And I think a lot of y'all feel that way. You know, I don't know if Tech's going to be in the mix. I thought that going into the season that Tech would go play UT in Austin and a spot in the championship would be on the line. I really believe that. But it doesn't we'll have to see. Let's see how they do against Kansas State before I'm willing to get back in that conversation. But the idea of beating Tech for Texas Tech fans and for the program and everything, of beating UT in Austin and ruining their chances of going to the Big 12 championship and the playoffs and all that, I mean, come on. How happy would y'all be with that scenario? Gerald Devereaux says Hutchins should be a game changer. Also, he was on an official visit. He said with an M. I don't know what that means. Joe Gutierrez says good balance in the game today. Tech ran because Baylor couldn't stop it and didn't go away from it like Tech would have in the past. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, that was the key. And that's what I was skeptical of going in, that eventually Kitley would revert back to being what I call a passaholic. But he didn't. You know, you got to give him credit. And how much Baron Morton may or may not be checking out of things, you know, I don't know. But the bottom line is Tech ran the ball early throughout the game. And I really loved, I don't know if it was in the third or fourth quarter, maybe in the fourth, when Taj got like 6 carries in a row and Baylor just couldn't do anything. How many times have we seen Texas Tech on the other end of it, including last year against Baylor in Lubbock? But Tech just kept feeding Taj, and Baylor they had no answer for him. And I mean, that's when you see that's the 60 minutes of us that McGuire's been talking about. He said that he didn't think other teams can handle that. I mean, that's exactly what you're talking about. You just imposing your will on the other team. And, you know, that's what Texas Tech was able to do. Last Sunrise says, if anyone is ever wondering, Jones' home environment is way more hyped and intense than Baylor. I mean, no doubt. I hope nobody had a doubt about that. Cowboy Season says, Jared, in your opinion, who are the top 4 Big 12 teams right now? Man, that's a good question. We were talking about that earlier today, and I don't know. I mean, UT and OU, but I don't. You know, what's funny is I do think they're probably the 2 best teams in the Big 12. But these aren't great Texas and Oklahoma teams by their standards, you know, of like 10 years ago or for Oklahoma 5 years ago. I mean, they're good teams, both of them. But I think they're the best in the Big 12 right now, but they're not great teams. So after that, I mean, do we got to give West Virginia credit for what they've done so far? I mean, it's crazy to me to say that, but right now you got to say, yeah. And then after that, I mean, I don't know. I would have said Kansas State like just 2 weeks ago, but I mean, and after that performance at Oklahoma State, I think they'll be competitive, but they're not great. I mean, they're not. I don't think they're in the top 4. All the new schools, Cincinnati, Houston, UCF, BYU is probably the best of the 4 right now, but they're not in the top 4. So, I mean, is Tech in the top 4? I mean, I tell you what, if Tech beats Kansas State next week, I'm prepared to say they're one of the top 4 teams in the Big 12. But until then, I'm not ready to say. You have a bunch of teams that are just kind of hanging around, mediocre, to be honest, under UT and OU. I begrudgingly admit, although they're not great teams, those teams are beatable. So, especially like in a road game for them. Kansas should be up to Kansas, right? That's what I'll say. I'll say OU, Texas, West Virginia, or Kansas. They're 3 or 4. They're interchangeable. And then Tech's right around there at 5 or 6 in Kansas State. So after that, it gets kind of ugly. Gerald Devereaux said Texas A&M. What about Texas A&M? They lost today, right, to Alabama? Let's see. GBYO says, with this running game, I'm feeling better with the remaining road games. Well, yeah. I mean, if you could impose your will like that and the defense plays like it anywhere close to how it has, let's say, the last 3 halves. They didn't play great in the first half against Houston, but the second half, great. And then this whole game against Baylor. If they play anything close to that, combined with this running game, yeah, Tech's going to be tough to beat. I agree with you. Save the best for you says giving West Virginia credit makes me feel sick. Yeah, I get it. I mean, and not because I have some hate for West Virginia. I just don't think they're that talented. But I mean, come on. They won at TCU. They handled their business against Tech. They beat their rival Pitt. I mean, at some point you got to it hadn't been pretty, but you have to say, look, I respect that they're getting the most out of their team. They're winning the games they're supposed to. And right now, you know, Neil Brown's getting a lot of love, and deservedly so. GBYO said the Jones should be rocking next week. That's right. It better be. Parker Brown said, what made the wheels fall off with Baylor? It showed in their bowl game last year. Is it players, coaching? Baylor tried the same wide zone and toss crack plays from last season. You know, one thing, this is one thing that I found really interesting. And I did a comparison both on the radio and on Inside the Red Raiders of Tech and Baylor's last 5 recruiting classes. And then just doing research with that and looking at their notes, I was shocked to find that the class that is playing the most or had played the most snaps leading up to the Tech game was the 2023 class. Now, some of that are the transfers, but there were a lot of freshmen too. But the bottom line is a lot of new players were playing or have been playing the most snaps for Baylor this year. And that's really surprising to me. I mean, really, yeah, you want to augment your team with transfers. You got to play the game with the transfer portal, but you still want that's one of the reasons everybody was so high on Tech is the great end of last year and a lot of returning players. That continuity really helps for a number of reasons. I was shocked that Baylor has so many new guys playing so many snaps. And it was like a big number. It was 2023 guys, 2022 guys, and then the rest were like, weren't even close in terms of number of snaps played. And this is a team that won the Big 12 a couple of years ago. It's a team that's had a lot of success over the last 10 years. I mean, I know they've had some dips and some drama and a lot of drama and all that stuff, but I mean, they've won a lot of games the last 10, 15 years, had a lot of success. To have, I guess, that much roster turnover was very surprising to me. And I think that's a big reason why, at least, you know, this year, Baylor's struggling so much. Okay. David Huckabee says, Jarrett, where'd you get that background piece of the state of Texas with the double T? You know, I'm not sure. I think I should remember this. It was a present. I didn't get it. I'm not much of a shopper. I don't think that's going to come as a lot of surprise to anybody who watches my channel or is on his other Red Raiders. But it was a gift. I'm not sure if it was. I don't remember. I don't want to offend anybody who might be watching, but I think it was a gift. Billy Blueheart says 30 carries is a lot from any back. Do you think the coaches are concerned with load management, and are they nervous about the other backs they have? I think the thing is, I think no, to answer your first question. I don't think they're concerned with load management. I think 30 carries is about what Todd should get. I really do. I think he's capable of that. I think the durability factor, especially in college, has been overplayed. This isn't like a Tommy John's worry with pitchers kind of thing. I really don't believe that. Again, Taj hadn't had a lot of injury problems. He has had some injuries in his career. He's a running back playing Power 5 football, but no, at this point. I don't want to jinx him, but no. In terms of them being worried about the other backs, Taj does everything so well. Like, again, that they know what they have in him and they trust him. And trust is really important. And there's so much goes into running backs and pass protection. And, one bad play from a Valdez or somebody else could cost you a drive, and that could cost you a game, and then that cost you your season. So, I know that's the way the coaches think about it. And they know even if Taj doesn't get to carry, he's going to do something. Like, you watch some of the blocks he's when he hadn't gotten the ball, some of the blocks he's made the last 2 weeks have been outstanding. Some of the best blocks anybody's made for Texas Tech. So that, I think that plays a large role in it as well. All right, I'm going to wind down here pretty soon. We've been going 40 minutes. Got a couple more questions. Gerald Devro says, next 2 games should be interesting. Do you see another game that should get us there? Well, I think at Kansas is going to be tough, but TCU looks very beatable. That's a Thursday night game at home. I think Texas Tech, at this point, you look at that, Tech should win that game. I really believe that. I thought that before the season, but I really believe that now. So that's one. Trying to think. Oh, got the schedule right here. Let's see. At BYU, that's winnable. Again, if you could run the ball and play defense like this, and if the road woes aren't as big of a problem as maybe we thought, then yeah. And UCF at home, you got to win that game. So if you can beat Kansas State at home, then I think you don't have to worry as much about, is Tech going to make a bowl or not? You start thinking about, is Tech going to be competitive to make it to the Big 12 championship game? I know, again, it's a week-to-week proposition with college football, but maybe Tech has figured out its identity and could get on a roll here. Somebody needs to, because there's not this really again, Oklahoma and Texas are good, but after that, there isn't like a really dominant team. And I'm not ready to say either one of those teams are dominant. They're very good. They're very tough to beat, but they are beatable. GBYO says, I think Tech is at 20 recruits for 2024. Do you expect any more? Yeah, McGuire and some other people very much in the know at Tech have told me 21 is probably going to be their cap. You got to realize there'll be some other guys and some people that have probably you've seen on social media, but if you look on Inside the Road Raiders, I'll tell you exactly. Some guys that are preferred walk-ons, and it starts to muddy the waters in terms of who's a real scholarship commitment and who is going to play and is a really good recruit who normally wouldn't come to Tech, but they're getting that Matador Club $25,000 a year. And so they're going to come and they'll figure in the roster in a year or so. So bottom line, to answer your question, I think 21 is probably going to be the cap in terms of the amount of space they have. But it's recruiting. It's crazy. So we'll see. Joe Gutierrez says, not to steer away from this football game, but got to give Josh Young props for coming up big in the Rangers this far. Yeah, what a stud. And that's great for the Rangers to see them. What was it, 3-2? They beat the Orioles earlier today. It was actually at Bubba's 33 doing the radio show earlier. And, man, people were going – we almost couldn't do the show. People were going crazy. Even my producer, the intern I was talking about, they were freaking out. We were trying to do the show, but rightfully so. It's great. And Josh Young seems like a great dude, and, man, one hell of a baseball player. David Huckabee says, I feel like we saw a lot of underclassmen make plays on defense, especially on the D-line. Should we feel better next year with all that we'll lose on defense? Yeah, I think sometimes that's overplayed. Really, for me, it's not good that they're losing Dadrian Taylor, Malik Dunlap, Rashad Williams. All three of those guys are good, but I think they'll be able to fill some of those roles. For me, Jalen Hutchings and Tony Bradford. What is this defense going to look like without them? Hutchings has started like 52 or 53 games, whatever the heck it is. He's just been such a mainstay, and he's so good. And Tony Bradford's been really right there with him. Batman and Robin, just really good players. So I think they'll have good guys on the interior. We mentioned Duda Bang, some of these other guys. They'll have some guys to plug in there, but can they consistently play at a high level like we've seen Jalen and Tony, somewhat to a lesser degree, do over the years? I don't know, but I love those linebackers, man. Ben Roberts, Dingle, man, I think that guy's going to be a stud. And we get Jacob, when Tech gets Jacob Rodriguez back, I mean, that's going to be – I'm going to start feeling really good about the inside linebackers there. And you got some guys off the edge. I'm feeling a lot better about for sure. Save the best for you says, I guess Thompson saved a lot of mileage during his time here so he can go all out this year. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, SaRodorick was a great player. I mean, he scored a lot of touchdowns for Texas Tech. So that was a heck of a 1-2 combo. They trusted SaRodorick like they trust Taj, even though I still say Taj is better in pass pro than SaRodorick was. But SaRodorick was definitely passable in that regard, and he knew what he was doing. But this is Taj's year to shine, and, I mean, he is so far for sure. Lewis Harbor says, was Barron hampered by his shoulder this week? He still doesn't look 100%. Yeah, I think on some of the deep throws maybe his velocity doesn't seem exactly like we've seen in the past, but – in a weird way, obviously, I wouldn't even wish injury on any of Tech's opponents. I mean, I want to see each team at full strength and all that. I don't want anybody really get hurt, even though it's part of the game. I feel like the injury may have calmed Morton down a little bit. Like, instead of feeling like he can make every throw, no matter the situation, he is, a little more reserved, which, I mean, he's been more efficient. Look at the last 2 weeks. So obviously the injury is not a good thing. But if he learns through this adversity, hey, maybe I don't have to try and make every play, or maybe I can't. Even if I can, maybe perhaps make that throw, maybe I don't have to right now. So finding something good out of the adversity, yeah. But I do think he's still hampered a little bit by the injury, or being banged up by the injury. Well, that's a good question. Ryan Merkett says, Merkett Raider here. What's up, man? From Inside the Red Raiders. He says, should we have started Morton since game 1? Well, I'm going to say no. And I know some people are going to disagree with me on that, and I get it. And I was someone, I think it was after the Oregon game. I said, look, I want to see what Morton has. I said it publicly, I think before a lot of other people in terms of media. But Tyler Shuck, I mean, he came in, he was the starting quarterback in those 4 victories to end the season last year. He was MVP of the Texas Bowl, looked terrific. I mean, he looked like a different player than what we saw earlier this year. So I completely understand why they started him. I do think, though, that for this specific team, the way Tech has its best chance of winning, of running the ball and playing off of that, I think Barry Morton is a better fit. I really believe that. Cowboy season says, when does Rodriguez come back? McGuire updated that. It might be this week against Kansas State, actually. If not Kansas State, then I think it's at BYU. I think that's what he said. So very soon. And that'll be nice because, a lot is expected of Rodriguez. And McGuire's even said that he's kind of like the alpha dog of the defense. So, things might really be coming together for Texas Tech. We'll see. We'll see how they do against Kansas State. What was it? 11 out of 12 Kansas State has won. So that doesn't mean anything necessarily for this season. A lot of different players. But, the Joes should be rocking. I'm expecting another good game. I'm expecting Tech to run the ball and to play tough defense. And, we'll see what happens. But I'm excited. I think a lot of people agree with me in that I'm excited about Texas Tech football in this season again after these 2 performances. 3-3 overall now, 2-1 in the Big 12, and halfway through the season. And let's see what they do the second half of the season, because I think they could do some special things. But last question I'll answer here. He says at 3-3, things aren't how we hope, but I feel significantly better about the odds of going 500 more than I was a couple weeks ago. Yeah, I do too. Especially when you look at how some of the other teams play. I mean, you start looking at BYU, even though it's on the road. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. Even Kansas State looks a lot easier than it did just a week or so ago. TCU at home, that should be a win. UCF, I mean, Tech should win that game. I'm not saying they're going to, but they should win those games. So I think 7 or 8 victories is definitely possible. I really believe that Texas Tech has a chance of getting to that. And if you get to that, maybe you'll be in consideration for the big go into that final game the day after Thanksgiving in Austin with at least a mathematical shot of getting to the Big 12 championship games, which would be very exciting. So it's nice to be excited about Red Raider football because they lose. If they had lost the game to Baylor, then we would be having a completely different conversation right now. But they didn't. They crushed them. Big victory for Texas Tech, and we're going to have a ton of content on Inside the Red Raiders. We'll have more stuff on YouTube as well. But, hey, I really appreciate y'all tuning in. Thanks. It was a great chat, and we'll do it again next week after the game.